Hello and welcome to the new episode of the All Walks of Life podcast. In today's episode, I have Vidai Vaidya with me. She is the founder of two great organizations, Alter Ego and Women in Sport India. We spoke about great topics at length, such as the development that's taking place on her behalf, at least, of how she's trying to promote sports and how there should be equal opportunities for men and women in this country. Also, we talked about the social media management and the agency side of things, of when these players, women or men, are pursuing their careers and how they can take it forward afterwards as well. We touched upon other topics, such as she was one of the ones who was privileged enough to work for UEFA and present a presentation at FIFA, which was great to me, at least from a football fan's perspective. That would be a dream if I could ever do one of those projects. So we spoke about that and how it was to work for one of these great organizations. Lastly, we spoke about the whole situation in the Northeast in this country and how they're sort of being discriminated against, even though they bring such a large variety and such a large number of players to different sports across this country. It was a great pleasure speaking to Vidya ma'am, and I hope you have a great time listening to the conversation as well. Lastly, if you do enjoy my content, do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And yeah, enjoy. All right, Vidya, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on, ma'am.
Same here.
How have
I'm
you
happy
been?
to be here.
Have you been keeping yourself busy during the quarantine period then?
So many things are happening. I'm working on my startup,
Yeah.
Women in Sport India, which I recently registered, and lots to come. A lot
Yeah.
of things I've been planning, so
I mean-
I'm working on them. Yeah.
I'm very excited to talk to you because I've been following you in the whole women in sports area in Indian football and Indian sports as a whole as well. So, and I've been wanting to discuss some issues around Indian football and just football as a whole and how women play a role in that. So, and I think you're one of the good people to talk to in that sense. So, something I want to start off is that, like, I think you mentioned this in one of your TED Talks, that every other Indian is basically an engineer, and that's how
Yeah.
you underwent engineering as well. So can you just talk through that, of how you started off engineering and then moved into football?
Well, my father is also an electrical engineer, and he has his own consultancy company in electrical. So the reason why I chose to become an engineer is that. So if I can't do anything else,
Right.
that would have been my backup plan. But I never wanted to become an engineer. I was always thinking of doing something else. And as long as I remember, I have always been an athlete. If not football, before that I was a taekwondo player. For 7 years I played taekwondo. And I played at district level, state level. And obviously, as I started my engineering, I started playing football.
Yeah.
And when I started, there was just one club in the city where I stay, Pune. And I wanted to do more. And I saw a boys' team at my college. There were actually, I think, 2 or 3 teams of boys football teams, and there was none for girls.
Right.
And I wanted to. I saw them play university level football. I saw them play college events, and I wanted to also play
Right.
the same events and university level football. But we didn't have girls team at that time, so I decided that I will make a girls team for my college and then participate in football tournaments and university level football, so on and so forth. So that is where my football journey started. And as the engineering came to close, in my last year, I took a decision of entering sports field, and specifically football field for that matter. And then I started searching for relevant courses. And because I never wanted to do 9 to 5, sitting behind the desk and doing clerical work or listening to somebody else
Yeah.
yelling at you, in a way. So I was never that kind of a person. And I wanted to do something different, which is meaningful and which is something for me, So I chose football as my career, and I came across this course called Football Industries MBA, which is in UK. It's by University of Liverpool. And at that time, that was the only course available on football.
Hmm.
So I applied. Obviously, I had to get 2 years of full-time experience before I applied. But I applied, got selected, and did my MBA in football industries. So that is where the whole
Yeah.
football journey started.
No, I mean, I do because I see many similarities of the people who I've met in the sports industry who have had similar backgrounds as you. So they've gone into engineering and then later realized that maybe it's not for them, and then they've moved on to other fields like football or other industries even. So why do you think that is? And I wanted to ask you this question. There are some people who may have a great passion for the sport and really want to be involved with it, but they will still work for the 9 to 5s, considering that, yeah, this is a safer option for me, so I'll probably just do it, and football can just be a passion of mine which I can watch on a Saturday evening or something like that. Do you think that
Well,
that's still there, or do you think that's diminishing now?
for younger generation, I think more fields are opening up, and even the younger generation is thinking of participating or enrolling for these different fields, right? That is because I think the generation before us made sure that we survive no matter what. So they were financially stable. Or they are. Our parents are
Yeah.
more financially stable. So we get that freedom to think that, okay, I want my life to be meaningful. I don't just want to work for somebody. I don't just want to work 9 to 5. I want it to be something which leads to a fruitful life, right?
Right.
So we have that option. I think a generation before us and the generation before them did not have that option. It was all about survival. I've heard experts talk about this thing, and I actually agree with them. So it's because of our parents that we have this liberty to think freely. And that is why we see the younger generation choosing different options today than the earlier generation. And again, coming to your earlier point, doing a professional course like engineering, it never goes to waste, because it teaches you things which you can apply to any other field. I do apply engineering knowledge and logical and analytical thinking
Yeah.
when I'm working in sports as well. So I think your education, whatever it may be, it never goes to waste.
Right.
So even if people are doing engineering, medical before they enter sports field, that is perfectly fine, because it helps them decide what they want to do in sports field also. So I mean, these 2 points obviously go hand in hand, but yeah, I mean, that is my opinion, honestly.
I do agree with that because I feel that I'm kind of fortunate enough as well. So my parents lay like a really good foundation for me to build on actually going and pursuing my career in sports. So I'm kind of very grateful for that. But I do understand where you're coming from, that they really had to work hard in their particular industries to lay this foundation for me, and
Exactly.
then let me go on to explore things which I'm interested in. But so going back, so you mentioned how you went on to study at University of Liverpool and did a football industries MBA. I'm currently doing my undergraduate at Loughborough as well. I'm studying sport coaching and physical education. But why in particular did you choose a football centric program? Because obviously you said that that's pretty unique, but there are many sports management programs or even management programs which you can then apply into sports. So what was your thinking there?
My simple thinking was because I was playing football and I loved that sport
Yeah.
so much. I had to do something in that particular sport. So that
Yeah.
was it. It wasn't some complex decision making process for me. It was very simple because I
Right.
was playing it. I wanted to do something in it. That's it.
Fair enough.
And yes, I could have chosen sports management, but yeah, it was something about that course and about that game that
Right.
really inspired me and attracted me. So simple as that. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that.
And how was it like studying in the UK? Because when I was actually contemplating my decision to go abroad and study, people were telling me that sure, that's a good option because you'll have a great time there, great experiences. You get to meet good people, build a good contact base. However, it's going to be difficult when it comes to an employment standpoint. So you have to always consider coming back home and maybe setting up something here or even working as a part of Indian football or Indian sports. So was that a part of your thinking that you wanted to make something back home, or did you apply for jobs there?
Well, for me, it was not about jobs when I applied for the course. It was about what I can learn from them, right? So for me, it was about the learning experience or what they are teaching me, how the industry works. What is going to be my knowledge at the end of the course. That was the main thing for me. I never thought about it from a job perspective, but yes, it is difficult in UK and Europe, and I don't know now. I think the visa
Yeah.
regulations have changed a lot. I only had a 3 month visa,
Right. Yeah.
so I kind of knew that I will have to come back. But I mean, I did search for some opportunities, but luckily for me, I immediately got a job before even I came back to India.
Okay.
Through my internship, which I did with UEFA, and it was a joint venture between UEFA and my company, where I worked for almost 4.5 years.
Okay.
It's called Asian Football Development Project,
Yeah.
AFDP.
Yeah.
So I was lucky in that sense, but many of my colleagues or classmates, almost all of them who were not Europeans maybe or British, they have gone back to their own countries and they have found good jobs as well. So they are working. I don't think any of them have started something on their own, but that is definitely an option for you to consider, because a lot is going on here in India.
For sure.
And I think football market in UK, or sports market in UK and Europe, is being saturated. So I don't know how much you can do there, but here in India there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of problems, but those problems are also opportunities.
Exactly. Yes, that's kind of what I've heard from the people who've stuck in this industry for 5 years, 6 years. They said that obviously it's not even comparable to a UK standpoint or a European standpoint, but the impact you can create on an Indian football base or an Indian sports base is much greater than what you can in an European setup. So I kind of do agree with that, and I want to touch upon the UEFA and Asian development things later on, because that's also pretty interesting about your project that you've done. But just coming back to your time at Liverpool, because I'm a Liverpool fan myself, massive fan. How was it like studying in that particular city? Because that city is probably one of the most football-rich cities in the whole world, having Liverpool and Everton, and even Manchester is not close, is not too far by. So what was it like? Was it only 24 hours about football in that particular city, or what was your experience like in that city?
I love Liverpool, honestly. I mean, it's very different than you would think.
Yeah.
It is a very homely town. It's very warm, like not weather-wise, but like people are very warm. They are very welcoming. And I stayed there for a year, so it was like my second home. I immediately, when I entered Liverpool, I felt like home.
Yeah.
That is where it all started. And when I was there, the good thing for me was that my class was made up of people from very, very different countries, right? From Mexico, US to Japan, I don't know, Korea, Japan.
Wow, yeah.
And then there were 4 Indians, so that was nice. And obviously there were Europeans and English people as well. But I think the class was of these different cultures, so it made it easy because we always used to hang out, so we were like family there.
Yeah.
It wasn't not a single moment not together or not doing something together, because in a way we were kind of bound, so it was easy to connect with each other. And that is what I think made me feel at home, obviously. And I mean, people were nice. And honestly, when you walk around the city in Liverpool, it's not all football.
I mean, there's a lot of music.
You see regular people there, But I mean, considering the fact that there are 2 big clubs in one city, you'll be surprised how less football-related stuff happens around the town. Or, there was a big commercial mall at the center of the city. and if you go there, you expect that there would be football related activities there, but I never experienced that.
Yeah.
It was the town itself is a family town. So the activities, obviously some were football related, but you don't see a lot of football around. But at the same time, when the match is on,
Yeah.
Liverpool fans are phenomenal. I mean, the kind of passion that they have, and I've seen it firsthand. The level of excitement in the stadium itself is just amazing. The way they cheer for their team, the flags going all around, the Mexican waves and stuff like that. So I think, as far as I know, from the fan perspective, Liverpool fans are the best fans in UK, I think.
I think they're the best in the
So,
world,
I mean,
in
yeah.
my opinion. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a Liverpool fan myself. I mean, I've not been fortunate enough to watch a game at Anfield, but I've seen Liverpool play Chelsea away at Stamford Bridge, and it's probably one of the best experiences in my life, considering we were the away fans there, and yet we were louder than the Chelsea end. So, and
Yeah.
see, and it's like some people wouldn't agree because they feel that Liverpool fans are too outspoken, or they're always too political with whatever they think. But I feel that we just enjoy ourselves the most, and that's what sets us apart. But
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I've seen few matches. I've seen Arsenal. I don't remember if I've seen Manchester United, but I've seen West Ham. I've seen
Yeah.
Everton. And I've seen all of their fans. And among them, I think Liverpool fans stood out
yeah.
all time. They are
Yeah.
great.
No, I mean, like, I can talk about Liverpool all day, but like I want to talk about your journey and how you made it in the sports industry rather. So something I heard in your TED talk was you spoke about when you actually applied for the Liverpool Industries course. You found out when you went there from the faculty members that you were the only Indian woman who was a part of that course. And then you said that you were a little disheartened because you felt that people weren't getting enough opportunities, or women weren't applying to these sort of courses, but you also felt unique in the sense that you were the one who's actually taking it forward and you can set an example. So what was that whole experience like?
Yeah, so when I applied, none of the Indian women had applied for that particular course. So I was the first Indian woman to apply for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sad that women don't apply for this course. I think it is because that they are not aware. And I think after my graduation, I think a lot of Indian women applied
Right.
for that course. I am in touch with a few of them,
Yeah.
and that is good. I
Yeah.
mean, I like that. But I think the biggest hurdle is the awareness about these different courses: sports management, football industries, so on and so forth. But what is missing is the people telling them about these courses as well. Right? So I think if we want women to apply for these courses, they need to know about it. And the universities or the colleges that have these courses should come ahead and talk about them, spread awareness. I think that is where we need more effort. And obviously, people who have applied for these courses also hold the responsibility of spreading that awareness. So I try to make sure that I mention that I have done this course. But yeah, I think women also need to know more that they are fully capable of working in sports field if they feel assured that yes, they have the abilities, they have the characteristics, they have the quality to
Yeah.
make it in sports field. They will also start applying for these courses more as well. So I think two things: one is awareness, and one is assurance from industry people that yes, women are capable of working in sports field. Because so far it has happened that not all of women feel that they are
Yeah.
kind of capable of working in sports field, or they feel that men are more capable than them. But it's not true. Women have same qualities, same characteristics, better management to an extent. So I think they are equally capable, but they need to know that. And all of us need to tell them. once they start understanding this, they will automatically start applying for sports management or football industries MBA courses such as this, for example.
So
Yeah.
now I want to talk to you about how you set up your organization, so Alter Ego and Women in Sport India. So just what were the struggles like when you were actually setting things up? Because I know it can be difficult starting an organization off, and just your process basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult, but if you know what you want to do, it becomes easier. If you are clear in your mind about what you want to achieve, if you start something, things become simpler, and the struggle is easier as well. Because then you know what you're working towards. I think that is an important thing that I've learned after forming 2 organizations or companies.
Yeah.
Alter Ego essentially was immediately after I completed my job with AFTP. And the reason for starting that was to help athletes build their brands. Because in India, athletes do not necessarily understand what marketing themselves mean.
Yeah.
Or they do not understand how to make sure that their story reaches general public, which is required at this moment.
Of course.
Because they are taking so much effort on their performance, on their health, and they are working for India. They are representing India as a country. So I think their story needs to be told. And first thing that needs to happen is athletes telling their story themselves. So I think our Indian athletes need help with that, and that is the reason why I started Alter Ego, essentially. And when I'm talking about women in sport, I started women in sport immediately after I completed my MBA, because I was searching for a platform or a forum, for that matter, which would basically help me get in touch with women working in sports.
Right.
Especially in India. But at that time, there was no such forum available, which would help me get in touch with these women, which would guide me and let me know how things happen in sports field, or what more do I need to do to succeed or proceed in sports field.
Right.
So I decided I need to, if there is no such a forum available for me, then I will found it one. Yeah. And then I started Women in Sport back in 2015. And as I was doing my job, and then I started with Alter Ego, it was still going on.
Right.
In the background. I was trying to still connect with women like me. But last year, I took a small break of about 2 to 3 months. And in that break, I decided that I want to officially register my forum as a company.
Right.
And go ahead with it, because I started getting a lot of attention from media as well. I started getting invitations for example, TEDx, and lot of other speaking engagements also. So I started realizing that this is something that I need to do. This is something that is need of an hour. And this also has a lot of potential, because there are a lot of women who want to come in sports, but they don't know what to do.
They don't have a platform. Yeah.
And they don't have a platform. They don't know where to go and seek for help either. Right. So I think that is where the whole idea of Women in Sport being a company started.
Right.
And in Jan, I registered my forum as a company, private limited. And since then, I'm working on various programs. Right now, I have also started a series of webinar focusing on women working in sports, not just athletes, but women working in sports.
Right.
And it has been going well. It's well received by people also. And I'm trying to get in touch with women who want to get into sports. I'm in discussion with many of them. I've just today morning I posted on LinkedIn about having an online call with everybody who wants to work in women's sports field. So lot of things in pipeline. but it's been three or 4 months since I registered my company, but things have started speeding up quite fast than I anticipated.
No, I mean,
So
I've seen the kind of progress you're making, and it's quite inspiring actually for someone working in the football industry and sports industry rather, and seeing someone who's taking the right step in the right direction. Because I feel that whatever we may say, I think there is still a discrimination between men and women in society, and especially in sports as well. So that's what I was discussing with some of the other guests on the podcast as well. They said that we do see the women who do come in. So this was with a football club. They said that we do see the women who come in and participate. They're really interested and they want to pursue it further, but there aren't simply enough of these women who come in for these academies.
I agree.
So can you talk a little bit about the opportunities thing, or if there is a lack in of opportunities for women, and do you think that there is sufficient talent for women to progress in professional clubs, or as you said, working for sports organizations as well?
See, talent has no gender, honestly.
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Yeah.
Because when I joined my company, I was chosen over a man.
Okay.
So equally talented.
Right.
But gender doesn't come in picture when you are good enough, right? So I don't think that the selectors or recruiters even care whether you are man or a woman. But at the same time, they are right. There aren't enough women in each sector.
Yeah.
And these women need to be experts. They can't just say that I want to work in sports.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you choose me. That cannot be a solution. You have to learn. You have to have a skill that fits their requirement. I think. So we need more skilled women in sports field. May it be a coaching field, may it be a refereeing field, may it be data analysis, may it be sports management, operations. I can name so many, but they need to be trained.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and it doesn't have to be a sports management course.
Yeah.
But they need to have, if you are applying for, let's say, data analysis position, then you need to have data analysis experience.
Exactly, yeah.
Or if you are applying for sports management position, then you need to have management experience.
Yeah.
And I think this is the time that women can encash, because there is a big pause right now on all sports activities.
Of course, yeah.
Women, they can use this time as for their benefit.
For sure. No,
to train themselves.
Yeah. Go on, sorry. No, it's just something I wanted to add.
To train themselves and to upskill themselves, I think. So women are at benefit, if you ask me. Now.
For sure, Veda ma'am. I mean, in the sense that I feel that I totally agree that gender, talent has no gender, in the sense that simply you can't raise the feminist argument that just because I'm a woman, I deserve this position because there aren't enough women in the sector. I feel that you have to come in with the right skill set, and then it doesn't matter who they're judging you against, if it's a man, if it's another woman. If you are the right candidate, you should be getting the job. So I feel that should be the right step, and that kind of pulls me down to another tangent. So this is because I'm a coach as well, and I work closely in the coaching sector, and this is the thing that in the AIFF, because of the coaching licenses they have, and it's usually a batch of 30-35 people who enroll for it, and I would say that probably it's 25 to 30 men in the course and very few females. And generally what's the trend that we've been seeing is that generally there are only very few men who get selected, and maybe rightfully so, that they are only a few who are actually good enough to get that license. But generally all the women who enroll for the course get the license. So this is not me trying to degrade the value of their licenses, but it's just something to consider, in the sense that the AIFF cannot just hand out licenses to these women saying that there aren't enough women coaches in the sector, so we will give it to anyone who comes in. Do you have any thoughts around that?
This is the first time that I am hearing this.
Right.
And I think if AIFF is doing something like that, I don't I can't judge them because I don't know what the situation or what their thought process is at this moment.
Yeah.
Although I will try and get at to the bottom of this
Right, of
if
course.
it is happening indeed, because this is the first time that I am hearing this fact.
Right.
And at the same time, yes, there is a scarcity of women coaches. I'll give you an example of this, and I've been giving this example everywhere. I took my football girls team
Yeah.
to IWL qualifiers very recently, and the initial draft of requirements that we got or regulations that we got from WIFA, which is Western India Football Association. So in that draft, they had made it compulsory to have a female coach with B license for that team. But unfortunately, they had to change the rules. So I think AIFF is trying hard, or the federations are trying hard, but women also need to try harder.
Exactly, yeah.
To get that license. And it is possible, but at the same time, quality of coaches also matters.
Exactly, yeah. No, I mean, I'm totally in agreement with having more women coaches in the sport, because I feel that that's always a plus point in any sector. But I just can't fathom on a coaching standpoint and on a quality standpoint that the quality is degraded in that sense. So there's another capable men's candidate, but he will not get the certification just because there is a quota to meet, or there is some kind of thing that they have to fill. That doesn't go well with me. Something I wanted to talk to you about was that you recently mentioned how, as you mentioned, like in the social media aspect with the alter ego and things, you mentioned that the stories have to be coming out from the athletes. It can't be something that's garnered, let's say, from a marketing person who's just writing it for them or something like that. Something is that people generally, and maybe rightfully so in that sense, because they aren't educated enough. So they don't not know that football is the only thing in my life. And after that, I don't know what to do. After I end my career at 35, 36, then I have no plan as such. So you've kind of spoken about this whole after career thing as well. So can you just expand on that and how important that is in the sector?
It is, according to me, it is one of the most important thing that athlete needs to think about.
Yeah.
And it needs to be thought of while they are playing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or while they are active, because you never know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
One injury and you're out. At that point of time, you need to have a plan B.
Right.
But of course, at the same time, each and every athlete has a different thought process and the way of life, I think. And obviously, we can't enforce them to think about these things, because it may happen that because they are thinking about plan B, they might stop performing well in their career. So if it is hampering their performance, definitely that is something to be considered. And I know this because I've been talking to a few top level athletes, and that this has been one of their points.
Right.
But at the same time, yes, they need to definitely think about what they are going to do afterwards.
Yeah. No, I mean,
even
go on. Sorry.
Even after, let's say, you complete your career as an active athlete, nothing happens to you, no injury, nothing. You have done well in your career, but at the same time, you cannot play till you're 80.
Exactly.
Right? So you need to have some other thing to do after you're done playing.
Right.
So that needs to be thought of, or at least it needs to be in your mind that yes, I am going to end my career at some point of time,
right,
as an active player. So the impact when you stop playing is lesser than it would have been, because then you already know what you're going to do afterwards. And I think many great athletes have spoken about this.
Yeah.
I think Michael Jordan was one of them who spoke about, it was time for me to retire, and
right,
it wasn't a big deal because I knew what I wanted to do. I could be wrong. But many of them have spoken about this. So I think it's very important to think about, or at least have it at the back of your mind.
No, for sure. Like, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to interact with some really good agents actually in the Indian sector and in Europe as well, because I had attended this agency summit in London, and I got to interact with the agents of Mesut Ozil and the agents of Lucas Podolski and all these players, and they were basically echoing the same things that you're saying. They said that, so especially Dr. Erkut Shogat, he's the agent of Mesut Ozil and some of the other Turkish and German players. So he spoke about, and he's obviously one of the smarter agents out there, so he's kind of ahead of the curve. So he said that Mesut Ozil was one of the first people to adopt social media. And even though in the last few seasons, I'm pretty sure Arsenal fans won't like it when I'm saying this, but he hasn't been one of the most integral parts of the Arsenal system, and he hasn't played so regularly. But he still has the most social media followers in all Premier League players in Instagram, which is just because of how his agent educated him to start with these kind of external activities while he's playing. So it is obviously easy for me to say, to comment on someone like Mesut Ozil, who's earning so much money, he's a Premier League star. So it kind of doesn't even matter for him after he retires, because he's going to have so much wealth. But for the other, for the Indian players and for the people who probably find it difficult to survive after a career, after football or something, they can maybe indulge themselves into other skill sets that they might find interesting. Absolutely. It could be management roles. It could be working for the federation. It could be things like that basically goes well with them, I'd say. And I feel that, for example, like you with women in sport and things like that, agencies should have a primary focus on this, because I feel they are sort of educators and mentors of these athletes, because sometimes these athletes aren't well versed with these things. So how much of an emphasis do you think that like the agencies should actually hone it in these players, and not just make a money, not just take it for their profit and remove the player after his career's over or her career's over?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%, because agencies and agents are the people who are closest to the athletes.
Exactly, yeah.
They have a lot of influence over the athletes, and these athletes actually listen to them.
Exactly, yeah, they're like a father figure kind of a thing.
The responsibility, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with those points. First of all, yeah, I mean, that's really great talking about the whole agency side of things. But something else I wanted to explore was your projects with Asia Development Football and things like that. So, because I think you've done some really interesting work in this sector. So, if you can just talk about a couple of projects maybe, or something you found interesting working for them. And maybe for the viewers as well, talk about what it actually is.
Okay, so my first company, Asian Football Development Project.
Yeah.
It is now AFDP Global. It's now expanded from Asia to global now, which is amazing. I worked with them. So what we did was we funded development projects all over Asia. And PepsiCo was our investor funder. And we basically helped partner organizations. It could have been NGO, it could have been a federation, it could have been a private company who wanted to develop football at grassroots level. So we focused on youth and women,
right,
primarily, and we helped them fund their project. So they had to give us a proposal that they have this idea for the project, and these are the things that they were going to do. This is the financing part of it, and this is where they are going to need help from AFDP. And we would approve that application. We would see how many lives is that project going to impact, because it can't just be 10 people impacting from the project. So it has to be on larger scale. So we used to check that and then decide how much funding we were able to provide. And that was basically the overall concept of what I did with AFDP. Obviously, there were other people with me working on different projects, but my job was basically right from shortlisting the projects to presenting them to boards, and then making sure that they're executed well. So overall progress of the project. And it was amazing because I got to travel, obviously, around Asia. I got to meet very, very interesting people, and I saw that these people were working so hard to kind of improve lives of children, women, which was very inspiring. We hardly do any of these things. So that was one of the best time when I worked with AFDP. And before that, so during MBA, we have 3 months either internship or work-based project. So you work for somebody, or you develop a dissertation or a report.
Yeah.
So it's either or. So you do report or you do work-based project. For me, I was lucky because I got to do both.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was a joint internship with AFDP and UEFA. So the internship was funded by UEFA and the concept was by AFDP. So the report was on women's football in India.
Okay.
And I traveled around India, length and breadth of India, in rural regions, in villages, in obviously tier 1, tier 2 cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Pune. I interacted with people, and because there's no data, right? We don't have written data or data bank anywhere about women's football or any sport for that matter.
Yeah.
Or at least it wasn't available then. I'm not sure if AIFF has developed it now. So I had to physically go to these places and talk to them. Very less literature review, all conversation, interview, and written data collection.
Right.
And I think it was one of my fondest time. I enjoyed it so much that I think it's one of my life's highlight. I think those 3 months, because I did something that I always wanted to do in those 3 months, and I developed a report on potential of women's football in India. That was in 2013, so 7 years back. I'm sure that a lot has changed over the last 7 years, but that was the first report that I created on women's football, and it was then submitted to UEFA and AFGP as well. And I think it was published on UEFA website. I'm not sure now. I don't remember it anymore. But I mean, it was an eventful time for me. One of the best ones.
No, that sounds fantastic. Like that'd be something I'd be really interested in, because I feel that's a practical contribution that you're making to society or like sports as a whole. Because as you said, that there's very little, if not no, data that's available for these women in sports, even as big as football. So exactly like that. That's the whole question I wanted to put forward here, was that we understand the prominence of cricket in this country, and football is still growing, however one may phrase it. But as you mentioned, like you went to these rural places. Was it difficult maybe in some places that to introduce the concept of football, however bizarre that might sound? Because obviously living in a metro city, like I live in Gurgaon, like Delhi, Gurgaon. So it's obviously a well-known fact, football. Everyone knows football here. But from a layman's perspective, I'm guessing that in the rural sectors of India, they would still maybe not know what football is, or did they understand what football was?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the rural regions, they definitely understand what different sports are.
Okay.
So it's not that they don't know what different sports are, or what different fields or positions in sports field are, but very few of them are open to participating in such sports, boy or a girl. Obviously, there are some games that children play, like gilli danda and these kind of things. So yes, but if you talk about professional sports like football or cricket, there is awareness of it, but very less people actually participate in these games. But I think in the rural region, football has started becoming very famous, because all you need is a ball, right? As compared to any other sport. So it's cheaper, and many people can play the game at the same time.
Right.
So it is becoming popular, and it is in a way a tool to kind of break ice, or break the stereotypes for that matter. So a lot of non-profit organizations are also using football as a tool to educate children. So I think in the rural region, football is more popular than any other sport. Especially.
Because this was something I wanted to lead on to, was that the whole concept of sports for development, basically. Like the famous quote by Nelson Mandela saying that sport has the power of bringing people together or uniting the world, basically. So, and as you mentioned, there are several NGOs or non-profits who are actually working closely in the sector in places like Africa, where football and sports as a whole is being used as a tool to teach values, basically, that sometimes people can't learn from going to school, or they can't learn from general public as well. So, but something I wanted to touch upon is that you said that it was little hard for seeing women, girls rather, participate in these whole in sports like football or cricket. So how much of a push did you make to actually encourage them to play, or did you want to be a little more standoffish because it was something that you were involving yourself into a different territory, and that can sometimes look at a little bit snobbish or a little bit from another perspective, if you understand?
So I think that someone coming from city and telling them what to do is not something that they want to listen to, unless you're going to stay there for a while and they see you help them out.
It's the whole Swadesh argument.
Kind of, in a way. So for me, during that, because I had very short duration to collect all the data, only 3 months to travel across the country and to collect data, I tried to encourage as many girls as possible. I remember talking to a couple of schools and girls in those schools, and I tried to encourage. I think I have a video of my conversation with them, and it was very encouraging, and I was really happy to see that they were happy to, or they were willing to participate in sports. And when I told them that they need to play a lot, their face just lit up, right? So obviously the girls want to play, but there are some restrictions, some social restrictions, which we see in rural India still. So I think for me, it was just stand aside and observe for that report. But right now, through Women in Sport, I am trying to encourage more women into it. But again, a single person cannot do a lot. Right? So I'm going to need a lot of help from people working in those regions, particularly because they already have a name in that region. So me going there versus them telling these girls or parents there about sports and how girls or boys, for that matter, young girls and boys should participate in sports. I think when they say it, it is going to make more difference.
Right.
Because the people in those particular regions know the organization or NGO or company, for that matter. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to partner with these organizations all through India, and I'm trying to see where we can work together to spread the awareness. Right? So that is something that is in the pipeline, and I'm working on it. But I'm going to need a little bit more time to put plan in place before I take any action.
That sounds very interesting, because I feel that if there are more people involving themselves in sport, then more people will want to pursue it further on as a profession. But something I've researched in my perspective, so I've done a study basically on the midday meal program that was introduced by the Indian government into these in these government schools in India, and I basically compared these nutritional plans that they were provided. So as a study in high school, and I found that I think 95% of the kids that are there in public in government schools are malnourished. So basically they weren't getting enough nutrition, even though I could clearly see when I went and conducted these studies and collected data that they did much more exercise and they did much more physical activity than a person sitting in an air-conditioned classroom, which was my perspective of the other side of the argument, but they were still
Yeah.
much healthier just because of the amount of nutrition they were getting from the private schools. And this was
Yeah.
another quote I read somewhere that I think 70% of your body is made through nutrition, and then only 30% is whatever you do in a physical activity standpoint. So when I'm
Yeah.
coming here with this is that, is nutrition also a focus point when you're reaching out in these rural parts with women in sport? Or first are you just encouraging there to be participation, and then you can look at things like nutrition and other aspects that come with it?
For me, as an organization, Women in Sport India is looking at more participation
Yeah.
of women in sports. Because when you encourage women into sports, automatically they start thinking about what they need to eat,
Yeah.
how their cycle needs to be, day cycle. Do they need to sleep well?
Yeah.
When do they need to eat? How much should they exercise?
Hmm.
So all these things
A contributing factor,
automatically,
basically. Yeah.
automatically encourage the healthy body image
Right.
in women. And India is a big country.
Yeah.
India is a big country. It's huge.
course.
And I calculated numbers recently. So by 2025, the number of women between the age of 25 to 35 is going to be about 150 million to 200 million.
Wow.
So that's a huge number
of
of women to reach. So it's a big task. So like I said, there are NGOs already working in nutrition sector. You may have heard of maybe it is a Mumbai NGO, Oscar Foundation. There is a Slum Soccer
Yeah.
in Nagpur. So all these NGOs are essentially working in the field that you just mentioned. Nutrition, education through football.
Right.
So I think my target is to encourage women into sports, and then I'm planning to partner with these NGOs where they come in and they
support
talk
you.
about nutrition, how important food is. And there are a lot more of these.
Right.
There are a lot of NGOs working in different parts, different pockets of India on the same subject. They may not be related to football, or the sports that they are using may be something like volleyball,
Right.
or cricket. It could differ, but essentially their target is to educate children, or to make sure that they are eating healthy food, or they are eating enough, and not just children, women also. Right? So I think for me, it is better to partner with them than start something on my own.
Of course.
So for me, it is just encouraging more women in sports, and not just on field, off field also.
No, I understand that, because I totally agree with the fact that expertise should be given preference, and if someone's been working in the whole nutrition and sports development sector, then of course it's a much wiser thing to just partner with.
And if I was a nutritionist, I would be happy to be
Of
in the
course.
field, but I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
understand nutrition at all.
Yeah.
I know how to eat a healthy meal, and I know how to eat thrice a day at least.
Right.
But other than that, I am not a nutrition expert.
Of
So
course,
it
yeah.
will be wrong of me
Of course,
to
that's
kind
that's
of
the
venture
whole
into that
standpoint,
territory.
So something I'm very intrigued by, and then you mentioned how you traveled most parts of India to see the whole development of, or just see participation of women in India in terms of sports or a football context. So something I've been wondering about is that did you find a difference in states, or did you find a difference in cities of the quality of these girls in terms of at what age they were introduced to football? Because I can speak in my experience. I've coached in Madhya Pradesh, I've coached in West Bengal and the Delhi circuit as well, and I see a massive difference when it comes to Madhya Pradesh and when it comes to West Bengal, because when these girls or even boys are introduced to a sport like football or cricket is at a much younger age to when these boys or girls are introduced to sports in, let's say, Madhya Pradesh. So did you see a sort of a difference when you were going across the country, and how you may want to tackle that later on?
Yeah, so I think the most engaged children I found to be in northeast region of India. These people start playing football or any sport
Yeah.
from very young age, and they are very enthusiastic about it. They also have natural talent for it. That's another thing.
Yeah.
But they are more inclined to participate in football. And I was in Manipur. I was in Imphal for a couple of days, and I saw there was a match between Football Players Association of India and Manipur state team.
Yeah.
And they have, I think they have two stadiums, football stadiums, and one of them had about 10,000 seats or so. And the match was in that stadium particularly, and the entire stadium was full. It was not even ISL or I-League level of match. It was a state team versus Football Players Association team.
Yeah.
And the level of
support,
enthusiasm that I saw, the support that I saw, the entire stadium was full. And just amazing. So I think the level of participation in Northeast region is much higher than any other states I have seen. As you come to southern part of India, more focus is on education, fields like engineering, medical. So I think in southern states of India, the participation age becomes higher and higher, I think. But yeah, I mean, for other sports, I think northern region like Haryana, Delhi, these for wrestling, boxing, even these are the regions where you will see more athletes participate.
No, for sure. Like you touched upon this fact that these girls in the northern states, so such as the northeast region of India, have a more natural talent. So I think what I associate that is societal, is how you are brought up in a society, I'd say. So this is, I think I heard Sunil Gavaskar say that why do all the batsmen who play for the Indian team come out of Mumbai? Because Mumbai has short streets, so everyone has to practice the front drive, and that's what, if you keep doing that, then you basically perfect your technique, if that makes sense. So what these girls from the northeast region, or the boys from the northeast region, had from a very young age is to kick the football. And that's basically not provided to these other places of India. And through the ages, the Northeast has become superior in terms of giving out talent to India in the Indian setup. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, to an extent, yes. But I remember when I was in Manipur, I remember I met Bem Bem Devi, who was captain at the time. And she told me when she started playing football, there were not many girls playing football. So I don't think it is very different from what you see in southern or central region of India when it comes to girls participating in football. I think they do have in their DNA that talent, that speed, that agility, that I don't know, it's something that I see in them. Their mind probably works quicker. I'm obviously not an expert on this topic, but I do see there is a difference between talent from Northeast region. And it is maybe for men, you could be right, because they have been exposed to football for a long duration. But for women, it's the same situation as what you would see in southern part of India or any other region of India.
I would say maybe they aren't let's say exposed to the sport or say whatever, but I still feel that maybe their bodies they function in that way that they are more physically fitter, or they are able to be more agile, run faster. I feel that's maybe because of the place they're living in. So in the mountainous regions,
could be.
That definitely plays a role, in my opinion, of
Absolutely.
When you grow up, and the amount good oxygen you take in, how much you have to basically do physical work every day. I think that plays massive differences to, let's say, people being born in Delhi. You aren't exposed, you're exposed to a city life, so there isn't a lot of physical activity that one can take forward.
Yeah, you could be right about that. It could be the terrain that they stay in. It could also be diet. the food that they eat every day. There could be so many different factors that contribute to their agility, their speed, their talent. Definitely. I'm obviously, like I said, I'm not the right person to comment on that. But yeah, I mean, I think majority of talent, footballing talent, comes from there. Baichung Bhutia is a great example.
Yeah.
He absolutely changed the way we look at football today. And till recent time, majority of the girls' football team was from Manipur.
Yeah.
And it still is. So I think yes, there is something in that region that is worth studying, and it could be, like you said, it could be the region where they stay, it could be diet, but it needs to be studied. What do they do differently? That they have so much talent, or do they genetically have that capability? That I think that is something that needs to be studied a little bit, and I think their footballing system also needs to be studied.
Yeah.
Their state federation is very active, and it is very well organized. So I think both the things need to be studied.
No, I mean, totally. I mean, being a person who doesn't have an understanding into the genetic compositions of what these women or men may have. So we're obviously layman to comment on this, but I'm just saying from what I've heard and what I've seen, I'm making sort of assumptions in that sense.
Yeah.
But
you could be right about that.
No, but something I wanted to explore here is that you mentioned about the state federation and the whole culture of football basically in the Northeast region. So I've worked basically very closely with sports management companies who have a lot of players who come through this system, the Northeast, as most football sports agencies have. So they said that, as we talked about Liverpool earlier, like when you went there for education, do you see similarities? Because from what the clips I've seen of Manipur football or even Northeast football as a whole, as you mentioned, it's not only, let's say, a football game. It's a part of life for them. So, so that person said that it doesn't matter what's happening in town, but if there is a football match that's going on with a Manipur side or a side from Mizoram, there will be stacked stadiums. It's like a festival season, like what we have with the IPL here.
Yeah, I think it is it's a big part of their culture. I think it's a big part of their daily lives. And that makes a lot of difference. I think that is what sets them apart from the rest of India. We are trying to, or the federation or these leagues like ISL are trying to encourage that similar culture in different parts of region in India. But yes, it will take some time.
Of course.
Something that they already have.
Yeah.
Something that they immensely love.
Yeah.
I think you need to love the game first before you become fan of it.
Yeah.
So that is something that we see about cricket in the rest of the India.
Yeah.
We love that. India loves cricket.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you are tired from your work, whether you are a student with examination tomorrow. It doesn't matter. You will still stay up and watch the match. It's the same for them.
A very interesting thing that I've observed about the people from the Northeast region is that, so they say, let's say, Baichung Bhutia or any of these professionals who go on to play for the big legacy clubs in Calcutta or any of the big clubs in India, eventually what happens is that, and this is again an assumption of mine, this is clearly what I have seen, this is nothing a factual statement or something, and the agency I worked for also observed this, and they mentioned that however successful these people from the Northeast are, they are very rooted to their system. Like doesn't matter how famous you are, they come back and stay where they originated from. Like they're very close to their roots. So this is something I found very interesting, because I am originally from Rajasthan, but I was born and brought up in Calcutta, and then my father moved into Delhi. So there hasn't been a sense of association with me to Rajasthan as such. I do often visit it, but it's not like I would want to end my life there or something like that. Does that make sense to you, or do you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah, it does actually. And I think in case of Baichung, I think it is very true. He still stays in Sikkim, where he's from.
Randy is saying, I mean, there are many examples who I can name.
Yeah, I think all the women national team players I know, they are very, very connected to their own village or cities that they are from. They are connected to people there, and they are extremely humble. I mean, one of the kindest people that I have met in India. Absolutely. Even Baichung, I worked with Baichung for a while, and you know how big deal he is in India.
Especially football in India,
yeah, I mean, but still, I never felt that he was such a big deal when I was talking to him. And the best thing about him or the people in Northeast is they don't have all the facilities that we do. They don't have safe environment. They don't have roads or infrastructure. Now things might have changed. I'm not sure. I've not been there for a while. But they stay in comparatively unsafe environment, and still they are so happy. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. 1 hour of no electricity frustrates us. Right? We get cranky, we get angry, and we start blaming the government. Our struggle is nothing compared to what they go through every day. And despite that, they are absolutely phenomenal and happiest people in India. And I'm in awe with them. And I mean, it's just amazing. And they are so connected to their roots and their family, their culture even, which is very nice to me. Whereas I see Maharashtrian people giving up on our culture very easily. And we try to adopt probably Western culture more.
And I think this is probably a very controversial topic to speak about. So it's about like how people in other parts of India perceive like the Northeast. Like the fact that we call it the Northeast and not the separate states as a whole is a fact on its own. Like the fact that whenever we see a person who's walking down the street, I don't know, we probably, when we go to schools as well, today's schools in any city, living in a metro city in Delhi or something, it's very multicultural. There are people from Punjab, there are people from Bengal, there are people from all across the country, but it'd be very difficult for us to be interacting with someone from the Northeast region. And maybe that's why of how they're perceived by other people in India, of the racial comments that other people in India may put towards them, that they want to maybe just stick to their communities. Like they earn their money, they make their name outside, but they come back, if that makes sense.
Maybe that could be one of the reasons. I hope that things are changing now. But my only comment to such people who comment on them being from Northeast, or they have derogatory comments for them, I would say just go and stay in that region for 1 month. You will stop commenting on them. I think they are the most nicest people I have met.
For sure.
And I have just nothing but respect for them. They are equally talented. They are clever. At the same time, they are humble as compared to us. I mean, go anywhere in India, people are rude, little bit rude. But I think Northeast, Seven Sisters, I have no comments more than they are just best people in India, I would say. It has been a controversial topic for a long time.
For me as well, like that's something I obviously want to explore, because I haven't been there a lot. I've been to Darjeeling. That's little more closer to Bengal than it is to Northeast, what some people may call it. But it's fascinating, like the amount of natural beauty that is there. Like from the people I've spoken to who've actually gone there, of course, football is one thing that they're in awe of from the Northeast. But even like their closeness to nature, in the sense that how close they are to nature, and they are independent in that sense, if that makes sense. Like they can, many of them have farms, many of them make their own food, grow their own food and eat it, and things like that, which we living in metro cities would be totally averse to. If the supermarket closed down for one day, we'd be stocking up on things or going out to find food somewhere. So I feel that's something we need to learn from them as well.
Absolutely, I agree with you. There's a lot we can learn from them.
Yeah. Listen, Vaidya ma'am, it was a great time speaking to you. I mean, I think I learned a lot about the whole women's structure in terms of football and sports in the country, and just the fantastic work you're doing. So, I mean, just for the listeners, if they would want to know more about you, the work you do, if anything you'd want to plug, or where they can find your work, or where they can find you on social media.
I am basically always active on LinkedIn.
Right.
I'm very active on LinkedIn, but if you want to know more about women in sport, then we have website. It's a long name, womeninsportindia.co.in.
Right.
And we are also available on social media, all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. For all of it, you can find us by typing in @BeVisible. That is BeWisible.
They won't have to worry about the tags. I'll link them in this YouTube show notes. But for sure, yeah.
Sure.
No, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
I mean, sometimes they confuse between BeVisible. Is it BI or WI?
It was a great pleasure speaking to you, and maybe sometime soon we can do this in person as well, and not in a quarantine basis. But it was great pleasure speaking to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ishan. Yeah. I'll catch up with you soon.
For sure. Thank you, ma'am.